I'm your host, Riem Zin Labidin, and you are listening to Tech Tag Podcast.
Hi, I'm James Ward. I work on developer experience for AWS and been a long time developer. Just published a book with some co-authors called Effect Oriented Programming. Have a podcast called Happy Path Programming with Bruce Eckel, and glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Thanks for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, so good to be here. Yeah, so where do you want to start?
I usually ask what are your hobbies or some fun facts about you to know you more, and then we can start talking about your journey.
Sounds good. Yeah, my hobbies right now, I have a couple. I live in the mountains of Colorado, so I do try to get out and enjoy the mountains, hiking and biking and skiing and all that. But I also have two little kids, and so they're 7 and almost 9, and so there's a lot of, I guess one of my hobbies is entertaining them. And so sometimes that's getting outside with them and enjoying the mountains with them. Sometimes it's playing video games with them and doing puzzles. And that's definitely probably my biggest hobby at the moment. Over the last few years, I've had the working on the book. So it took us 4 years, me and Bruce Eckel and Bill Fraser, and we're writing this book. And so it was definitely a little hobby project that was super fun. And we just finished the first edition of the book. And so that was a fun milestone. But yeah, working on the book. And then Bruce and I have the podcast. So that's definitely takes a little bit of hobby time to do that. And then I don't know, I maintain a bunch of open source stuff in my spare time, like WebJars and other things. So yeah, I think that's pretty much most of my hobbies.
That's really cool and impressive. I am excited to learn more about the book and about your journey. And we can start from the very, very beginning,
Very beginning.
like how you got into programming.
Oh,
Maybe before school or after school, how
oh,
you figure it out, like that you like this field.
oh, that's a great question. So I was super into computers in starting in like junior high. So this is, I don't know, almost 35 years ago, and just loved computers. And so when I started, I was just a computer user and would dial into BBSs, which were, pre-internet and fun ways to hang out with other nerds. And so then I had some friends who I met in junior high. They're twins, and they had older siblings. Like there was a pretty large gap between those friends and their older siblings, and their older siblings were all super smart, going to like MIT and stuff. And so my friends started programming, and then they started teaching me how to program. And so we started with Pascal and assembly, and just had so much fun writing code, and loved learning. Would just spend all of my spare time writing code and learning how to program, and just had a blast with that. And so then through high school was doing a lot more programming, and then in college I started a math degree, never finished it, but I really enjoyed math. And so then got to start learning other languages after high school. And so in college learned Java, Perl, and then got a job in college where I got to start professionally writing code. And so that was kind of the beginning of it, but I always just loved writing code. And so still today, it's my favorite thing to do is to write code. So yeah, so that was kind of the beginning.
It's really nice to have guidance when you find someone who already know about it so they can
Yeah.
teach you.
I always had great mentors, like all through my career. I've had amazing people that have taken me under their wing and helped me learn the next thing. And yeah, huge that I've been able to have that as part of my journey. And so there's just been many people that I've been able to do that with. In many ways, I've had mentors, teach me new ways to program, or teach me system architecture, teach me cloud things, or teach me, yeah. So it's just been great to be able to pair with people throughout over the years and use that as a way to learn new things. So yeah, I'm super grateful for the people that have invested in me and spent time teaching me things. So tried to return that favor. And luckily in my career as a developer advocate for most of the last almost 20 years, been able to kind of pay that back in maybe some ways. So it's been a fun thing that yeah, I've had many people invest into me, and then luckily as part of my actual job, been able to do that for others in some ways.
Yeah, you are doing that like through your talks and the book and podcasts. It's really nice.
Exactly. Yeah, I used to write blog posts. I still would like to do more, but yeah, as many functional programmers reach the point where they feel that they are ready to write a blog post on monads. A few years ago, I had to write my blog post on monads as my rite of passage into the functional programming world, and so my blog's not as active as it once was, but I do like doing that, and yeah, I'd like to build samples and do talks at conferences and yeah, all sorts of things to just help others learn.
Yeah, it's valuable. And about like when you started to learn about programming, did you have this confusion about what would you choose to be a backend or where to put your focus on? Because it's really a huge field. You can be many things. You can
Yeah.
do many things.
Yeah, it's a good question because definitely when I was a kid, I wanted to be a game developer. And it's so fun to be able to imagine a game and then build it, and got to work with my twin friend back when on building some games together. And so that's where the passion kind of started, was I wanted to be a game developer. But then when I got the job in college, I was working at an internet service provider. And so then it was a lot of like sysadmin things. And then we started building web applications. So I just kind of like drifted through many different areas of programming and have not ever come back to games. Maybe with AI now helping me, I could go back to games someday. But yeah, I guess my focus has shifted depending on kind of job opportunities and interest. And lately, for I guess most of my career, it's been on kind of the more boring aspects of programming, the back end systems, that sort of thing. I did when I worked at Adobe for 5 years, do a lot of UI programming with Flex. I'm not very good at building user interfaces, but I'm not very good at like making things look pretty, that sort of thing. But I really did enjoy Flex because it was a programming model that was easy enough for me to be able to use. And so since the Flex days, I haven't done a whole lot of UI programming, a little bit in the web, a little bit on Android, a little bit with Kotlin and Swift and Swift UI on iOS. So like done a little bit of UI programming, but it definitely doesn't fit super well with where my strengths I think are. And so yeah, some dabbling, but yeah, I kind of missed the Flex days when UI programming was easier.
And do you remember like the challenges that you faced on the very early stages, like maybe on your first jobs?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's so many challenges with this realm. I'm sure it's true in other industries, but the space that is available is vast. And to be able to be a senior level developer requires so much knowledge. And so I think there's a lot of challenges on just how do you learn all the things? Like if you had to build a full stack application today, run it on the cloud, make it scalable, make it resilient, make it observable, make it secure, the number of topics that you would have to have deep understanding of is just monumental. And so, yeah, I think it's hard because what do you focus on? How do you know what you don't see? And how do you know what areas you should go into next and learn next? And so it's actually one of the areas that I'm hopeful that AI can help a bit, is I almost want in some ways like the AI to be the mentor that I've had through my life that can look at what I'm doing and be like, oh, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about how you're going to secure this, or how this is going to scale, or whatever it may be, like kind of bring this like blind spot awareness to what I'm doing as a programmer to help me then focus on what I need to learn next and where I need to expand my knowledge to further. And so, yeah, we'll see if AI gets there and if it's helpful, but it will be interesting to see, like, can AI actually help us progress through that journey in a more kind of directed route. Because I guess that's maybe part of the challenge, is like not knowing where you should be putting your energy to be able to be more effective as you go and as you grow. So.
Especially when you work on, for example, in a team that you all have the same skills and you need to figure it out all together, and through the experience you will understand if it is the right path or not. I can imagine, like, when you get some questions, you might not know, like, these kind of challenges. Have you have them?
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a lot of trial and error, or at least in my journey, there is a lot of trial and error. Like, would do things wrong and then have to learn how to do them differently. And that, even with the mentorship that I had, there was still just a lot of essentially wandering around and, not knowing the right place to focus, the right things to work on, the right ways to expand my knowledge. And so yeah, I think that is a huge challenge, is just knowing what you should prioritize. For me, one of the things that I think has been super beneficial in my journey is that as a developer advocate, it's kind of almost in a way forced that I have to focus on two things. One is communication and the other one is collaboration. And maybe this is true kind of everywhere in the developer space, but especially true for a developer advocate is you have to be able to communicate well, you have to be able to collaborate well. And so those have been two areas that I've had to do a lot of work and a lot of trial and error to try to do those better. So yeah, I think on the communication one, there's so much of what we do when we work with in the collaboration. Like, I guess the way that we collaborate is often through communication. And so figuring out the right ways to communicate, the right ways to share something. And so I don't know. I think I've gotten better at it. Like, and open source has actually been a great piece of this as well. So on my WebJars project, I just got a great contribution. Somebody helped like totally revamp the WebJars website, and it was awesome. And then I went and kind of overwrote some of the person's changes without really communicating well around what I was trying to get to and the feedback that I had. And he responded like, "Hey, can we talk about these changes before you just push them?" And so I had to think okay, how do I communicate with this person and get to a better collaboration? Because this person, sometimes what happens in open source is people just drop something in and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had that assumption that was going to happen. But turns out this person does want to actually be around and be helpful and continue to contribute. And so I had to really think okay, how do I communicate to this person that I'm super grateful for what they did and I'm sorry for overriding their changes and would love to get into a better collaborative workflow with them. So yes, I think open source is a great way to start to learn some of these skills. Being part of a community, being part of the Zio community and hanging out on the Discord, great ways to see when communication is going well and when it's not going well. The Scala community gives us some good insights into how things have maybe not gone well and how we can do things better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for me, that's been maybe the most effectful place to invest in trying to get better at, is around communication and collaboration. And maybe part of that is that I now have a deep enough foundation of technical skills that I can learn a lot of the new technology pretty quickly. That's not a lot of challenge and doesn't require a lot of effort now, but really the challenge is around how do I interact with humans and how do I get into a good collaborative rhythm with the people that I'm working with. And that's in my job, that's in open source, that's in a lot of ways. And so yeah.
It's not easy with communication in this field, especially in programming and contributing. With code review, for example, I notice we usually say when things are wrong. It's rare to remember to show appreciation for the good code. And sometimes people, when they put all the effort in the code, they can take it more personally or something like that. So you need to figure out how to make it peaceful and having a good collaboration and communication. It's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. And even I try really hard to bring kindness to everything that I do and all my interactions. But sometimes, I don't know if it's just on Twitter or whatever, because of the culture of things there, I can say some things that are not kind. And so it definitely is an area that I continue to try to work on is, yeah, how do I bring kindness to all these interactions? Because I think it generally just goes a lot better when we are kind to the people that we're interacting with, on whether it's social media or open source or our coworkers or whatever. And it maybe is not natural, and so it takes work to think about how we can bring kindness to our interactions and how that helps us kind of get what we want more easily, because I don't like to work with people that are not being kind. And so if I'm not being kind to others, I have to assume that it's not going to be helpful to helping me get what I want. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point.
Yeah. Especially if there is like kind of competition, it becomes also difficult to make it peaceful.
That's actually a place that is hard for me, that I've had to work on and still need to do more work on, is since I learned Scala and functional programming, I'm very convinced that it is a much better way to build programs. And I sometimes, I think, can be a little unkind when I'm talking about why functional programming is better than other ways to program. And I guess that's one of the challenges, that there's this part of my like ego that is attached to this thing. And so I believe very strongly that functional programming is awesome. And so it can come across as being arrogant or being aggressive towards people who are wrong. And so I think that is definitely one of my challenges with my journey, is like yeah, I really do believe that there is a good way to make illegal states unrepresentable. And when the Java Twitter account had a tweet where they were just throwing some exceptions to make illegal states unrepresentable, I had a reaction to that. And I tried to be kind, I think, in the way that I responded to that on Twitter. Maybe could have even been more kind, but definitely like stems from this, like, no, you were doing it wrong and I know how to do it right. And I guess if that's my attitude in that, is that wrong and right, then I'm not going to be able to like get to a good, kind conversation that can help people move forward, if that's what I want them to do. Or maybe I shouldn't even have that attachment to them moving forward and doing things differently, or I don't know. So I guess it's still a complex space that I'm trying to figure out. Is I really do believe that functional programming is a better way, and what do I do with that? How does that impact how I interact with people, and how do I help people move to that if I believe it's better? But I guess like in some ways it comes back to trying to have empathy for where the person is. And if I could like put myself in the shoes of a Java developer reading my tweet about how Java doesn't know how to make illegal states unrepresentable, like how am I actually, how would they perceive that, and would it help them move forward to where I would like for them to be, or is it going to make them defensive? And so yeah, so maybe there has to be kind of this empathetic trying to understand how someone else will perceive what I'm trying to say. So yeah.
Yeah. Through the different roles that you worked, how was it like the progress?
Yeah, so I did just professional kind of enterprise software development for a number of years, and was in a startup doing a Flex customer service portal. So I was building a customer service portal for a company with Flex on the front end and then with Java on the back end. And we were pretty early adopters of Flex. And so that's when Adobe approached me and said, "Hey, we need a developer advocate for Flex. Are you interested?" And I was like, I am terrified of speaking in front of people. Like, I'm like, I can't imagine that is a good role for me, but I'm going to try it. And so that was when I became a developer advocate. And I think that was almost 20 years ago, for Adobe. And so then as a developer advocate, I then had to combine the speaking and the blogging and the writing and all that with the writing of code. And I think I'm not the best speaker. It's not something that I don't like get all excited to like become the best speaker in the world, like a Venkat, or like there's some really amazing speakers in our world. I really like enjoy the code. And so for me, that's always been the most interesting and exciting part of it. And so it's been fun in developer advocacy that I get to combine the code and building things with the teaching and the instruction, and then collaboration with like product management on how can we make this better. And so yeah, it became this like super fun mix of things where I still got to write code, maybe not as much if I was doing full-time software development, but then I get to do all these other fun things alongside that kind of wrap it all into this super fun experience. So been a developer advocate for most of the last 20 years. I did take a couple deviations away from developer advocacy, but yeah, most of the time been a developer advocate. And now my new role, it's called developer experience. I work on developer experience, which is kind of a fun way to put it, is because really what we want to do is give developers a good experience, and that's education, that's samples, that's whatever they need. But then there's also this other side of it, which is if there are things about the experience that we have today that could be better, then we need to work with the product team to make those things better. And so it's really a good way to kind of capture that developer experience is not just this broadcast mechanism, but really it's this collaboration with external developers and internal product teams that are really about how do we make all this kind of end-to-end stuff better. So developer experience now, but still essentially developer advocate role. And then my two deviations away from developer advocacy, when I was at Salesforce, I was a developer advocate for Heroku and Salesforce developer stuff for a number of years, and went to Lightbend and was a developer. Well, no, back then it was called TypeSafe. Did developer advocacy for them. Then went back to Salesforce and back to developer advocacy, but then had this really cool opportunity at Salesforce to create their open source program office. And so I became the director of open source, or I forget what all the full title was, but essentially got to establish Salesforce's open source program office. And so that was a super fun opportunity. I had a blast doing that. Still got to write a decent amount of code for that because there was some infrastructure that we needed to put in place for how we manage our open source approval process and all sorts of other pieces to just kind of the management of that program. So I did that. And then from Salesforce, I go to Google from there. I think I did go to Google from Salesforce. So I went to be a developer advocate at Google Cloud. And so did that for 3 years. But then I took my other step away from developer advocacy. I was doing a bunch of Kotlin stuff with Google Cloud. And there was an opportunity to become a product manager on the Android team for the Kotlin programming language, and super fun opportunity to like learn a whole new set of things, learn how to work better with product management. I spent 2 years as a product manager for Kotlin at Google. And then from there, just back in April, went to AWS to work on the developer experience team. So yeah, most of the last 20 years been a developer advocate.
Interesting. And I think it's very valuable about the experience to try product management. It's a whole different perspective, right?
It is. And it was super useful for me as a developer advocate to see that perspective, because I think as a developer advocate before being a product manager, I had kind of these blinders on for like the way that I would see a problem, or the way that I would see how to frame something. And so being a product manager, I realized like, oh, I need to like think about things in so much broader of a perspective, that it's not just about the developers want this thing. It's more about, okay, the developers want this thing. And then there are many other stakeholder personas. There's the sales team and what they need. There's the marketing team and what they need. There's, just like, there's an endless list of stakeholders and people that the product manager is having to like hold into balance all these things, partners. And, so it really helped me kind of get this broader view around what it means to think holistically around decisions that I want made, things that I think should be different, things that I advocate for, feedback that I provide. Like, how do I provide feedback in a way that's going to be helpful to product management versus just like complaining about something? And so yeah, it was super useful skill set to be able to spend some time on. And I had a blast. Like, the Kotlin team is awesome. I like working with the JetBrains folks and the Android Kotlin team and the Kotlin community. It's really a very kind community, and not a lot of the ego stuff that I've experienced in the Scala community. And so really delightful to work with. There's definitely some things that when I work in Kotlin, I miss about the world of Scala, but it was super fun to work in Kotlin and still write a little bit of Kotlin. It was a really fun part of the journey was doing that.
That's awesome. Now your current role is also they give you like a problem statement and try to collaborate with different teams and propose some solutions, or how it is exactly?
Yeah, good question. So let's see. In AWS, it's a massive organization with a lot of different services and products. And there's been a few areas that I've been working all kind of around how does AWS provide a better developer experience? And there's a lot of different touch points to that. Some of that is like our console, some of that is the SDKs, some of that is like CLIs, some of that is things like the infrastructure as code pieces. And so been doing some work and some presentations around using a language called Pickle, which was created by Apple. And Pickle is this really nice configuration language that has all sorts of great features to it. And what it does is it can generate YAML. And so while CloudFormation, the kind of platform default of AWS for infrastructure as code. So I've been doing some stuff around Pickle and CloudFormation and really enjoying like how we could make a better developer experience for the IAC pieces of AWS. So that's been one piece. One of the pieces that I'm really excited about that I've been doing some work in and exploring in and learning in is around our AI stuff. Obviously, AI is all the rage, but there's some really fun things happening there. One is Bedrock, which is essentially an API to models that you can run on AWS. And so you can like pick your model if you want to use the Anthropic models, if you want to use, I don't know, the Llama models or whatever. There's all sorts of models you can choose from. Then you get a nice little REST API and you get SDKs around that to use AI LLMs and all that. So that's been fun playing with that and building some samples. One of the interesting samples that I wrote in that space was there's kind of this emerging way of doing structured outputs from LLMs. Like typically LLMs will just give you text output, but in most I think most of the LLMs now, you can say, when you give me your response back, formulate it into this structured data. And so you provide open API specification when you make your request, and then the data that you get back out complies to that open API specification. And so I came up with this fun little sample in Kotlin where I just have my data class. And so my data class, represents the structure of what I want to get out. And then I make my natural language query to the LLM, and then what I get out conforms to the structure of the data object that I had specified through, generics on the response. There's like it's called like structured output from LLMs or something like that. But super fun, like, way to use LLMs, because then you can ask it all sorts of interesting questions that aren't text oriented. Like typically the de facto app for LLMs has been a chat application, but there's so many other interesting uses of LLMs. And when you can get structured data out, it opens up all sorts of opportunities. So that was a fun little experiment there. So then the other area related to AI is AWS has a AI coding assistant essentially called QDeveloper with plugins for VS Code and for IntelliJ. And so I use IntelliJ. So I use QDeveloper. And what's been fascinating in this space is that I now have totally switched the way that I work as a developer. I used to, as a developer, like try to write the code. If I didn't know what code to write, I'd go like search the internet or go read docs. If I ran into a problem, I'd go search Stack Overflow. I'd open like 100 tabs. And now I default to using the QDeveloper in my case as being my like primary interface to what I'm trying to do. So if I have questions, I ask the LLM. If I have problems, I give them to the LLM. If I need to do something kind of menial, I get the LLM to do it instead of me having to do it. Like some people use this to like write their tests. I try to be a little more test driven, where I try to start with the test and work backwards from that. But there's places where the LLM will just like give me the lines that essentially I was going to write, and so that can be kind of helpful. But really, like that multi-line completion, I think it's kind of one of the lower value things that the LLM, these coding assistants can do for you now. It's all the other things that totally change how I do development that really have a lot of value for me. And so yeah, so been using QDeveloper as I write code, and I've started to figure out like, how do I help other people like learn how to make this shift, whether it's QDeveloper or Copilot or Cursor or whatever. Like there is a shift happening for a lot of developers to become kind of this AI first developer,
Yeah.
where you use the AI as your kind of primary interface to what you're trying to do and what you're trying to learn and the problems you're trying to solve. And sure, sometimes it doesn't give you the right response, and so you need to go actually search the internet, but that has become less and less the case for me. A lot of times I can stay in my IDE, do what I need to do, learn what I need to learn, solve the problems I need to solve. And so, yeah, it's been a super fun shift for me.
Yeah, and you deliver faster, and the focus is on like making things done, and is very helpful when you get these responses.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's like, being able to work faster. Like, why is that interesting? Is because there's a goal that I'm trying to get to. And if I can accomplish that goal with less pain, less toil, and maybe even faster, then that's great. Why wouldn't I do that? And so yeah, it definitely has been fun. Not just using AI to use AI. We're using these tools because they help us enjoy what we're doing more. So yeah, it's been fun.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And are you also part of their community, like AWS Invent?
Yeah, so reInvent, our big AWS
reInvent.
conference, that's coming up in a month. And so I will be at that, and I'll be doing a presentation there on Pickle, the configuration
Oh,
language
cool.
that you can use with CloudFormation. So yeah, so that's going to be fun to do that.
Cool. I actually got the chance to join an event, AWS Summit. AWS
Okay. Oh
Summit.
yeah, the summits. Yeah, I've been to one
Yeah.
summit. It's pretty amazing, the scope of those events, and they do a lot of really interesting developer stuff there. So yeah, so that's cool. You
Yeah.
got to go to a summit. What'd you think?
AWS is a huge community. It's like really a
Huge.
lot of
Yeah.
people, and yeah, it was very interesting, and also to see the tools because I also am using AWS services, and it's really cool to attend talks about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Super fun.
Yeah, and how you manage to do your workday and then with open source, for example, or side projects, how you manage this?
It's definitely hard, especially with little kids, to find the time for all of that. And so I think there's, in some ways, you can sacrifice, like, I don't know, exercise for open source, and for me working on my book and doing my podcast, which that's been part of what I've done. The other thing that I've kind of sacrificed a bit is sleep, and I don't get nearly as much sleep as I used to. But it's because I've really enjoyed working on this book. We do book nights with Bruce and Bill and I. We're all in Crested Butte, Colorado. So one night a week we get together and work on the book. Usually we have dinner together at like 6:30, and then we go till like midnight. And so it's just like super fun hack session, writing code, figuring out the right way to tackle and explain a problem, and so really enjoyed that. It really gives me energy. So even though those nights I'm not getting a whole lot of sleep because the kids are pouncing on me in the morning to get ready to go to school the next day. But yeah, so it's, definitely, there's trade-offs to a lot of it, to find time to work on these things that I'm passionate about. But you got to have those passions that really give you energy and invigorate you. And so yeah, for me, I've been able to still carve out some time to do those things. And yeah, it's been fun. And I love, like I said earlier, like I think we started with, I love writing code. And so it's like, it really is fun for me to learn new things, learn new approaches to things, explore new concepts. I've been learning this new effect system for Scala called Kio,
Yeah.
that Flavio created, and super fun to like tackle learning this new way to look at effects. And so yeah, just I love that time of learning. I love the time of writing code and working on my open source projects. And yeah, it kind of is invigorating for me. So, but there's some trade-offs to that. I
Yeah.
probably should exercise more.
And I think like the secret is the passion. Like once you really love what you are doing, even there is not enough time, but you make it possible as much as you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, that's right.
Maybe you tell us more about your book.
Yeah, so it's called Effect-Oriented Programming. It took us a while because we've been working on it for 4 years and we just shipped it about a month ago. And so it took us a while because we weren't totally sure when we started what would have value. So we started with like, oh, this is going to be a Scala 3 book. And then we were like, Scala 3 is cool, but there's good documentation. Like, what uniquely can we provide in that space? So we're like, let's shift. And so then we shifted to it being a Scala 3 and Zio book. And so Zio effect system, an effect system for Scala. So we're like, that, we tried that for a while and we're like, are we just like repeating the documentation of Zio? It doesn't seem like we're really doing something that is the full potential of what we could do. And so then we shifted to, oh no, what the thing that is needed, the thing that we can uniquely contribute to this world that is special is helping people understand why effects are a great way to manage complexity, how they create better ways of like fitting pieces of a program together, how they make it easier to test pieces of a system, how they make systems more reliable. And so we really we probably made this shift a couple of years ago, was let's write a book about effect-oriented programming, really just about the effects. Why effects? What's the power of effects? Why are they so awesome? Why should everyone be modeling their systems with effects? And so really narrowed down on that concept. And then Scala 3 and Zio became the ways that we illustrated those things, but it was not a book about Scala and Zio. So we actually want to have other editions of our book, like a TypeScript effect version, maybe a Scala Kio version, maybe someday a Kotlin version when there's kind of a good way to do effects in Kotlin. And others, like I'm totally open. Like if there's good other effect systems, like maybe we have an OCaml one, maybe we have Rock, maybe we have Unison. Like there is other emerging languages that have effect systems in them or ways to do effects. And so the book very consciously, when we were writing the book, was, are we illustrating effects or are we illustrating Zio or Scala? And we really tried to keep it focused on the effects. And so hopefully it will be easy to port the book to other technologies because it's not a book about Scala and Zio. It's just, that's an implementation detail. So yeah, we'll see where we go with that. Maybe we'll have some other editions in the future. But yeah, super fun. It's a pretty short book, and hopefully people walk away and they understand why effect systems are valuable. And if they want to use Scala and Zio, they'll understand some of the how. But really, the core goal is like understand why. Like what are the things that effects really bring you, and why are they valuable?
Yeah, it's a very common question. Many people would ask, why would I use effects? And this really would be a valuable book.
Yeah, and then at the end of the book we get to resilience library, which really like puts this icing on the cake of like once you have effects, you can tackle some really complex problems in very straightforward ways. So we have like 6 different examples of using resilience that just totally make it clear, like once you've done this kind of hard work of learning effects and using effects, you get some really amazing things with very little overhead. Like we have, how would you do a global rate limiter? Oh, it turns out it's super easy once you've used effects and resilience and Zio. Or how would you do bulkheading? How would you do hedging? Like there's all these things that just become super easy that are these like oftentimes like require a ton of engineering. You have to like reconstruct how everything happens when you're not in the world of effects. With effects, you just slap on the global rate limiter, done, like it's super easy.
Yeah.
So I think that really puts a nice bow on the concept of once you get to some of these higher level abstractions, it just becomes super easy once you have effects.
Cool. And how did you manage to collaborate on writing a book? Because I don't think it's easy.
Yeah, the collaboration was luckily easy for Bruce and Bill and I because we're all in the same town and we would get together
Mm-hmm.
once a week and work on it. And so and then we each kind of brought our own strengths to it. Like Bruce has written many books, and so he's very good at writing good prose. He's very good at asking the right questions. Bill is really a wizard at Scala and Zio, and so brought that. I did a lot of like kind of almost like infrastructure engineering. It was very important to us that all of our code examples were tested and compiled, and that we were able to take the code examples out of the book and create the examples repo that has you can just like clone, and now all the examples are there. And so like there was a lot of like infrastructure engineering that went into making sure that the code that's in our book is runnable code. It actually works. The output that you're seeing was actually created from the code that was run, and that there's consistency between that and the examples repo. Like, so there was definitely some challenges just on the infrastructure side. Yeah, and then it was actually a super fun collaboration. We really enjoyed working together, and we'll continue working together on other things too.
Cool. And this book will reach people. It will be really valuable to others at every point in time, like even after many years. I think it's really good that you did that.
It is such a fun way to give back in a lot of ways to the community. It's like we never wrote the book for money. Like that's like no one writes books for money. We wrote the book because we were passionate that we wanted to help other people learn these concepts. And so we put in a lot of work to help people learn these concepts. And like you're saying, yeah, now that it is written down, hopefully there will be, many essentially generations of programmers that can learn effect-oriented programming and teach others effect-oriented programming. Like I hope our book is the first book of effect-oriented programming, and that there's many more to come, and that the next programming language that emerges, I hope that it has effects built into it. We've already seen this with Rock and Unison.
Yeah. About the podcast, how you started, like it seems that you know Bruce a long time ago, and how did you got the idea to make this podcast? And what is the idea of the podcast for people to learn about it?
Yeah, so it's called Happy Path Programming. And Bruce, I've known Bruce for almost 20 years. I started coming up to Crested Butte, where I live now, and going to Bruce's conferences up here, and just got to know Bruce well, and then moved up here to the mountains about 11 years ago. And so Bruce and I have spent a lot of time together. We wrote a Flex book together a long time ago. And Flex is long dead, but yeah, so Bruce and I have worked together and done conferences together, done all sorts of fun stuff together. And during COVID, we were like, we need some interaction with the outside world, and so let's start a podcast. And so we started our podcast, and I think we recorded a number of episodes before we figured out kind of what the topic was, what the general concept of the podcast was. There's probably two things. One thing is that we really enjoy talking to smart people, like we had you on, and
Thank you.
learning from them. And what's weird is that if Bruce and I were like, would you be up for like just an hour-long phone call with me to just like talk about some nerdy things? You'd probably be like, I don't have time for that. But if we're like, come be on our podcast, you're like, sure. And
Yeah.
then we get like that knowledge from you, that like hour of learning amazing things from you. We get that, but then other people get it too, because it's a podcast and gets distributed. So just super fun way to like learn amazing things that we'd never have any other opportunity to learn. And so that's kind of one of the core things. It's just like learning from super smart people and like you. And so that's been fun. And then the other topic that like broad topic that emerged was that Bruce and I both are passionate about how do we help developers kind of build better programs more easily. And so we came to this concept kind of early on of you've heard like people talk about the happy path is like a lot of times in programming, the happy path is like this assumption that there's never going to be anything that goes wrong, that I'm going to like write the code, and I just am going to make some assumptions that like everything's going to work. But things fail, things don't work as expected. We get inputs that aren't what we thought they would be. We all sorts of reasons why our programs don't always work well on the happy path. And so the concept that we initially were focusing on was, how do we help developers be on the happy path, but the happy path should also be like the good, like quality engineered, like the good path too, and so how do we kind of bring those two things together? And so yeah, and so we've had a number of episodes about all sorts of things related to that, whether it's functional programming or CQRS or CRDTs, or just like that concept spans so many different areas of programming. And then sometimes we talk about happy path in regard to career, or happy path in regard to other skills like communication. So we did a really fun episode about kind of bringing mindfulness and kindness to our interactions with our fellow programmers. And so that with April Winsell, I think. So anyways, just huge spectrum of types of conversations that we have, but all like centered around how do we learn from really smart people, and how do we make this happy path be the good path, be the best way that we can program and interact with others. So yeah, been super fun.
Yeah, it's a very good idea, and especially the timing during COVID. I remember before that there used to be a lot of conferences and people know each other. And then when you see the episodes with these people, you feel like it's like you connect with them, even it's not directly, but indirectly. And it's really nice also, to hear about their knowledge and about their journeys or their happy path in each spectrum that you mentioned. It's really cool.
Yeah.
As the latest part of our session is if you have an advice you would like to share with people, especially those who are starting their career journey.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we covered some of the biggest things already around kindness and communication, and so I think all that stuff is important. We covered the AI piece, but just to reinforce that, AI is completely changing how we do things as programmers, how we do things in daily life. So yeah, I think for people starting their career, embrace it if you haven't already. It's I think most young people are pretty bought in at this point from what I've seen, but yeah, it's a big deal. There's pretty significant waves that come in the world of technology. The last really big one was mobile, and AI is definitely it's pretty clear it's the next big wave that's going to change a lot of things. And so yeah, embrace it and figure out the best ways to use it. There's still a lot of kind of unsolved problems in the space. So there's a lot of opportunity to dive in and tackle some really interesting problems. And I think it's a super exciting time to be a developer and help figure out what the world looks like in for the future, essentially, but until the next big wave comes. But yeah, it's a fun time.
You mentioned a lot about AI. Should we worry also if they replace us? It's a common question. Many people would really worry about it.
Who really knows? There's always risks in these huge technology shifts, that things change. I don't know how they're going to change. I wish I had the crystal ball. But for at least the near term, the thing that I've heard around this, I think is exactly right, is that you're not going to lose your job to AI, at least right now, but you may lose your job to a developer that knows how to use AI really well.
Oh.
And so I think that's the thing to focus on for now, is that we're very clearly in this accelerated space where there are developers that are learning how to use these tools and integrate them into their daily life and be more productive, have more fun doing their jobs, and be one of those developers that really learns how to use these tools, especially for the menial stuff. There's a lot of things as a developer that aren't very fun, and if we can figure out how to get the AI to do those parts, of course, why not? Let's do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
it's really good advice.
I don't know if I don't know if 50 years down the road we don't need to write code anymore. Maybe it's 10 years, who knows? Maybe never. The other option is that in 10 years, maybe there is 100 million developers because now anyone can be a developer and get in the door much easier because the AIs are helping them with so many things. I mean, that's the other like end of the spectrum. So who
Yeah,
knows, in
that's
10
true.
years, do we have 100 million developers? Do we have 0 developers? Like no one knows.
But it's a good point. For now, we don't know what will happen, but let's use the opportunities that we have and keep growing and learning, using these tools.
Exactly.
Nice. And we are lucky to be in this time because I think before there are less guidance, and at least now we can have the guidance.
Yeah, exactly. I ask my AI dumb questions all day long. And one of the nice things about the AI is it doesn't make you feel dumb for asking dumb questions. It actually will often say, that's a great question. I'm like, thank you. I thought it was kind of a dumb question, but I'm glad that you think it's a great question. So it's really kind. The AI is always really kind, way kinder than humans, which is surprising because it was trained on humans, and humans aren't always as kind as, Stack Overflow answers are not always the kindest answers. And my AI is super kind when it responds to me.
Yeah, you're right.
So maybe the AI can train us on being kinder.
Sometimes I ask AI to improve my sentences in a very, to formulate it in a very good way, even if I want to say a bad feedback, but the AI help me to be kinder.
Great at doing that. Yeah, totally. I need just like the right click on GitHub to like make this sentence kinder. That would be a nice little plugin for GitHub.
Yeah. It's very nice to talk to you, and I enjoyed our conversation. Thanks a lot for sharing about
Yeah,
your
it was
journey.
super fun. Yeah, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I wish you all the best for your book, and talk to you.
Sounds good. Hopefully I'll see you somewhere soon.
Yeah, maybe in AWS conference.
There we go. Let's do it.
I'm looking forward to our next episode with a new guest and new inspiring story. Until then, stay safe and stay tuned to our next episode. TikTak, tackle the inspiration.